I hope this gets to you before your birthday.
506, but that is not good enough for Easy Company.
If you've seen the original The Boat from 1981, you remember how it ends. The crew survives the whole mission, weeks of depth charges, and they finally make it back to port. They step off the boat, and then an Allied air raid hits, and most of them are killed right there on the dock. After everything they went through, they die in the last 5 minutes. This series picks up 9 months after that moment. A new crew on a new U-boat heading out from the same dock. On land, there's a young German translator who gets pulled into the French resistance. 4 seasons, and it cost about $32 million to make. One of the most expensive German TV productions ever. Everyone speaks their actual language here. German characters speak German, French characters speak French, English characters speak English. No dubbing everyone into one language for convenience. It sounds like a small choice, but it changes how the whole thing feels. This is the third Spielberg and Tom Hanks World War II series after Band of Brothers and The Pacific. It's expensive, and it sure looks like it. $250 million budget across 9 episodes. It follows the 100th Bomb Group flying B-17 bombers over Nazi Germany at 25,000 feet. They called themselves the Bloody 100th because of how many people they lost. Except they didn't actually have the most losses in the 8th Air Force. That was the 91st Bomb Group, which lost 197 aircraft. The 100th lost 177. What earned them the nickname wasn't the total number, it was how the losses happened. Of 306 missions, the 100th flew. Just 8 of them accounted for nearly half of all their casualties. They'd go months without losing anyone, everything running smooth, and then one afternoon they'd lose half the group. That's what made them infamous. At the premiere, surviving veterans of the Bloody 100th showed up. These men are in their late 90s now. One of them, John Luckadoo, they called him Lucky, was one of the last living original members of the group. After watching the series, he said it made him feel like he'd just flown another mission. This one follows 5 friends in Berlin. 2 of them are brothers who end up getting shipped to the Eastern Front. One's a nurse, one's trying to make it as a singer, and the 5th is a Jewish tailor who's just trying to survive. You watch them from 1941 all the way to the end of the war. It's one of the only German productions that tries to show what it was like inside the Wehrmacht without turning everyone into cartoon villains. It won the International Emmy for Best Miniseries, and then it made everyone angry. German neo-Nazis hated it because it showed ordinary Germans participating in atrocities. Polish people were furious because some of the Polish resistance fighters were portrayed as anti-Semites. It got so bad that the Polish ambassador filed a formal protest. This is World War II as a cozy detective drama, and I mean that as a compliment. It's set in Hastings during the war, which is about as close to the Western Front as a civilian could get. And it follows Detective Chief Superintendent Christopher Foyle as he catches murderers, exposes black market spivs, and deals with spies and fascist sympathizers on the English home front. Each episode runs about 90 minutes. In 2007, ITV canceled it, and because they canceled it mid-run, they had to throw away scripts that covered most of 1943 and 1944. The show had been moving through the war in near real time with gaps of maybe a month between episodes. After the cancellation, those gaps jumped to a year or more. What ITV didn't expect was the reaction. The presumed final episode aired in April 2008 and pulled 7.3 million viewers and a 28% audience share. And then the letters started coming. Furious viewers demanding the show come back. So many letters that ITV's new director of programming reversed the cancellation and ordered 3 more series. Stephen Knight made a show about the founding of the SAS, and it's based on Ben McIntyre's 2016 book, which was the first authorized history of the regiment. McIntyre got access to the SAS's secret archives, stuff nobody had seen before, and turned it into a book. It's about David Sterling, Paddy Mayne, and Jock Lewis building the regiment from scratch in the North African desert in 1941. The show's based on that book. Season 1 covers North Africa, Season 2 moves to Italy, and the battle sequences are genuinely thrilling. The first season's disastrous parachute mission and the airfield assaults are highlights. It's taken some criticism for playing loose with the truth, though, especially in how it portrays Paddy Mayne. Mayne was an SAS legend, one of the most decorated British soldiers of the war. In the show, Jack O'Connell plays him as a violent, insubordinate thug. Some people who knew the real history weren't thrilled about that, but if you can accept that it's more myth than documentary, it's a hell of a ride. This is HBO's companion piece to Band of Brothers. Same producers, same treatment, $217 million budget, spread across 10 episodes. It follows 3 Marines through Guadalcanal, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. But it's a very different show. Band of Brothers had clarity. The men were fighting across Europe, liberating towns, pushing toward Berlin. You understood what they were doing and why it mattered. The Pacific doesn't have that. These Marines are fighting for tiny specks of turf that nobody's ever heard of. There's a viciousness here that isn't in Band of Brothers. You see Marines laughing as they take pot shots at a Japanese soldier, and then you see those same men dealing with their friends' blown off limbs and spilled guts. Richard Flanagan's father spent 3 years in a Japanese prisoner of war camp. He was one of 13,000 Australians forced to work on the Thailand-Burma Railway. It was a 12-month construction project that killed over 90,000 Asian civilians and 16,000 Allied prisoners. Flanagan spent 12 years writing a novel based on his father's experience. It won the Booker Prize in 2014, and now it's a 5-part miniseries on Prime Video. Jacob Elordi plays the younger version of the main character, an Australian surgeon, and Kieran Hines plays him in old age. The story jumps between a forbidden affair with his uncle's wife, his captivity on the railway, and the life he lives after the war. The show premiered at the Berlin Film Festival and got one of the warmest receptions of the entire festival. Critics loved it. Then it landed on Prime Video and basically vanished. Despite the reviews, despite the Berlin ovation, it didn't even crack the US top 10. The Germans had this idea during the war. They kept having prisoners escape from their camps, and some of these guys were doing it over and over again. Real problem cases. So German command decided, let's put all these incorrigible escape artists in one place, a castle called Colditz, supposedly escape-proof, maximum security. Concentrate all the troublemakers in one fortress and the escaping problem goes away. The result was the exact opposite. At least 130 prisoners got out of Colditz during the war. The BBC made a series about it in the early 70s, and it became their most successful drama. 2 seasons of men tunneling, scheming, and conning their way out of this castle. All the prisoners based on real people who were actually there. They had Pat Reed on board as a technical advisor, and he was Colditz's actual escape officer during the war. If you watch it now, the production values look pretty rickety. It's very much a 1970s BBC show in that way, but the writing and the performances are something else entirely. It outstrips what it looks like. The BBC turned this one down at first. They felt you couldn't make a comedy about England's finest hour. Making fun of the war effort, making the Home Guard look like bumbling idiots. That wasn't going to fly. They were completely wrong. Dad's Army ran for 9 series, 80 episodes, 18 million people watching this group of old geezers in the fictional seaside town led by the fussy Captain Mainwaring getting into one ludicrous situation after another. Jimmy Perry created the show, and he'd actually joined the local defense volunteers himself when he was 16. He was drawing directly from what he'd seen and lived through, and several of the older cast members had actual war records. $125 million. That's what Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg spent on this series after they'd finished Saving Private Ryan. 10 episodes following Easy Company of the 101st Airborne from their training all the way through the end of the war. What they did that nobody else had done, they put the real veterans on camera. At the start of each episode, you see actual members of Easy Company on camera. Old men now, talking about what happened. You don't know who's who at first. The show doesn't tell you which veteran matches which character until the very end. So you're watching these actors go through hell, and then you see the real faces of the men who actually lived it. Dick Winters, played by Damian Lewis, leads the company, but the show keeps switching focus between different men. Easy Company drops into Normandy on D-Day, survives the disaster of Operation Market Garden, and walks into a concentration camp in Germany. That last episode is the one people remember. Nothing prepares you for it, and the show doesn't try to make it easier.